Sue just made a comment to me which was very interesting because it kind of fits into some of the places that I wanted to jaw with. As you know, we're into a presidential election. Let me just ask you this. Hillary obviously is going to be the nominee on the left.
Right.
So I don't think there's any big deal there.
She's going to be appointed the nominee on the left.
Yeah, you know, she's going to get it. On the right, we have to go through some primaries. Would you, the first question I have for both of you, would you be okay with Trump being the nominee on the right?
I don't think Trump would be my first choice, but I think it's ABC. Anybody but Clinton.
Oh. Okay. That could be the, but I have to tell you, I think young people who might be conservative in their thinking would vote for Hillary because she is seen to be more civil than Trump.
Well, that's a good point because I think she has that on her exterior, but if you know people on the inside, a lot of people will tell you that's a front, that's not how she deals with in normal day-to-day activities.
Okay. But young people don't see that. Young people just see the surface of things, and they'll see her as calm and polite and giving the farm away and meeting.
Well, she's a good attorney.
And Trump is kind of a blustery kind of guy. So,
yeah,
what do you
think,
Polina?
I would be okay with him being winning the nomination. Yeah.
So you don't see him as a problem?
I see him as a solution.
Oh,
you do?
Interesting. All right.
But you know, you mentioned something about Hillary, of her demeanor and the way she acts, and this is probably something you wanted to discuss today. I'm not sure what your agenda is, but how do we? Because obviously Trump stands for a lot more than what Hillary stands for in our, you know, a lot more that we agree with, right? But is he expressing it the way that Christians want him to express it? Is he behaving the way that we would like him to see? And we all have different opinions, and I think a lot of young people and a lot of women do like him and do like that forceful approach because we're sick and tired of people sugarcoating things. But still, is there a better way?
I have a question for you, and you brought up a good point there. You know, that maybe he articulates his views and viewpoints in ways that the Christian community isn't that fond of. Now, we have seen in the past that if a candidate, according to the Christian right, isn't quite, say, Christian enough or strong enough, say, in pro-life movement or such, sometimes the Christian right doesn't get behind a candidate and they will sit out the election. Is that a danger if Trump is the nominee?
Oh, I think we've proven that we do that very well. I think if we don't like the person, instead of voting, we sit it out, and especially if our person doesn't win the primary.
Right,
And so a lot of Christians sat out because Romney was a Mormon. They just sat it out. And so, and you end up getting another 4 years of Obama. I think Christians are now forced with, you know, what is the big picture? Jesus has never been on the ballot, nor will ever be on the ballot. And so we look for a standard in somebody that, you know, ironically enough, we ourselves don't even maintain.
That's a good point.
And so I think now we may have learned our lesson that our inaction has caused us to get things that we otherwise wouldn't have not liked to have seen happen. So I don't know if Trump continues to ride this wave out through the primaries, which I don't think he will, and I could be totally wrong. Here's the biggest mistake we're trying to do. We're trying to crown somebody today.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Well,
and that's the problem. You can't do that. You got to let the states represent themselves.
Before I make my next point, let me ask you, are you okay with Trump being a nomination? And if you could change something about him, what would that be?
Well, that's a hypothetical.
Of course, everything is.
The first part of your question is, if he's the nominee and it's him versus Hillary Clinton, I'll vote for him. What would I change about him? I think he needs to become more statesman.
And what is that?
Curb your tongue.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Look, I think what we like is that his way of making money and being successful is being the bully who he is, and it's made him very successful. And we think that's the answer to our problems today. But here's a problem. Here's a problem.
Okay.
We are looking to a man to fix man-made problems. Okay? And so we as Christians are in a pickle. We had the opportunity to scream over these Planned Parenthood videos, and we didn't. So I don't know if we have forfeited our vote by being silent on something that we should have been very loud about. So I'd like to answer your question openly. I'd like to see him turn and become a statesman. But you know what? If it's not in him, it's not in him. This may be who he is.
Right.
And is that a bad thing?
Got a question.
I'm not comfortable with it.
Do you really think Donald Trump is a bully in his business practices?
That's a very judgmental question.
I don't know if you can reach that level of success. Perhaps you can, but especially in the business that he's in, by bullying people around. I don't know if that. I don't know if that's kind of a misconception about Donald Trump because he is so unreserved in the things that he says, or if there is some validity to that.
I don't.
I mean, I
we're asking judgmental questions about a person's personhood.
Yeah.
The only thing I can say about part of your answer to your question is this: in business, you start off in a humble position,
yeah,
and then you become successful, and your attitude slowly changes, and you begin to grow, and that begins to stick on you, and it takes a real person of humility to say that your increase is by God and not by yourself. And I think that probably at one time he was a little bit more humble in his negotiations that got him to go where, and then all of a sudden you reach a point of success that everything you touch turns to gold. It does have a tendency to make you a little on the bully
Let me
side.
ask you this. Are you more comfortable in how Donald Trump acquired his wealth or how Hillary and Bill Clinton acquired their wealth?
Not a fair question, but well, Polina, say something.
You're digesting that one.
No,
I'm just trying to think you keep saying that we're being judgmental, but we have to judge the candidates, so I think it's normal.
Yeah,
Another word you said is that you're not comfortable. And I think maybe we have made it too much about our feelings and, well, I'm not comfortable with this candidate. Well, so what? He's a successful businessman. He can negotiate. He can bring peace. And I'm not just talking about Trump. I'm just giving an example. Well, I'm not comfortable with a woman being a president. Well, so what? I mean, is it really, are we too touchy-feely and don't even dare to raise voice, because if you do, you're not Christian?
One of the questions I'll bring up after the break is the whole issue of political correctness. It's killed us. So what you're saying is that we're being reserved of expressing our true feelings in thinking that it may offend somebody or give a less than Christian image of what we're doing. Look, I admire the fact that Donald Trump is a successful businessman at a level that few can ever obtain.
Right.
Now he inherited some of that, and he got a jump in life that most people don't.
Right.
But he's handled that inheritance extremely well and has done what he's done, and I think he needs to be commended for that. He is a negotiator. I mean, you and I get a joy out of reading a book or watching a good movie. He gets it out of reading financial statements.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, that's what he's become. So. I don't fault him for that. I really don't fault him for that. And I think most people who are on his bandwagon see him as a guy that can fix things, because he has taken broken down companies and broken down hotels and broken down resorts and turned them around and made them very successful. So we want somebody to fix it. I just think being president of the United States requires a little bit more decorum than what he represents. That doesn't mean he won't make a good president.
Well,
go ahead.
Successful politicians usually become successful because they are politically correct. can a man who is not politically correct become a successful politician?
Yes, yes, and that's where the country is. The country now is in pushback mode of politicians, political correctness, Congress and all of its nonsense and bureaucracy, and certainly is in pushback of the liberal press. So what his candidacy is representing is the grassroots America has had enough of the baloney.
Yeah.
And so he represents that pushback. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, can God use him? Sure. Mm-hmm. Bible says he puts in who he wants, takes down who he wants, yep. And the heart of the king is in the hands of God, and he turns it like water.
And well, I was going to say that I think one of the things that attracts people to Trump is the fact that he doesn't accept large donations, or so he says. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen in the past, and with a lot of presidents and congressmen and statesmen, that the money in your pocket means that you owe to someone. Yeah. And that it's a mess. I mean, you look at Clinton's, you look at any president, Republican or Democrat, donations means that you're going to be torn apart between different different opinions. So that's one of the things I think that attracts people to Trump. But let me ask you this question. Do you ever raise your voice at your kids? Maybe not now, but in the past?
Sure.
Okay. Just wondering, we do raise them with our kids. I don't understand why people are so against.
Yeah, who do we love more than our kids?
So, if, well,
so the point is,
why do we get so offensive when people raise voice in television?
Yeah, why if Donald Trump is direct and perhaps a little bombastic
and cares about this country,
and people put him down for that, perhaps it's not that different than parents do. So, and parents truly care for their kids. So, is Donald Trump a caring individual for our country?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah, I think he loves the country. I think he's doing it his way, and I don't find that to be bad. And I'm not saying he's a bad person. I'm just...
You know, generally Trump...
let me just put it this way. He's not my first choice, and I don't know who my first choice is.
I agree.
That's where I'm at right now. Let me take a quick break. We'll come back. There's plenty to talk about, and then we'll add political correctness to this.
I'm Polina, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, we're back, and Polina and Jerry joining me today. We're just John, that's all. We're just John. We're coming towards the end of the year. There's a lot on people's minds, and as we go into this election cycle, there's a lot of buzz. And I think there's one thing that we need to be cautious of, and that is that we're trying to take the latest poll and call it, that's it, it's over. It's not. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the polls going into an election sometimes are even way off, mm-hmm. You know. The real polling will start in about 30 days when you get into Iowa, New Hampshire, and you start getting into some of these primary states, and let the grassroots people have an opportunity to express themselves through a ballot, not necessarily through a phone call. Because sometimes a lot of these polls are what they call push polls. In other words, they ask you a question that suggests the answer that they want. And so you got to be kind of careful about how some of these polls are done. But nonetheless, right now it seems to be a three-person race. You got, on the Republican side, you have Trump, Rubio, and Cruz. And I would say Carson's still in there, so it's somewhat of a four-man race. Carson said yesterday on the news that he has met with his team. He sat down. They're changing the messaging a little bit. He's uncomfortable with what some of his advisors are asking him to do because it's not who he is. Oh, yeah. They want him to be a little bit more Trumpish.
I suppose, yeah, more aggressive.
Yeah, mm-hmm. That's not who he is.
Right.
So anyway, but the Rubio and Cruz thing continues to go on. I would hope that Rubio and Cruz, look, there's so much more to talk about than each other, but politics being what it is, they have to poke around like that, and that probably will heat up. Rubio got a big endorsement yesterday by Trey Gowdy coming on, who's the...
South Carolina, North Carolina?
Yeah, he's the chairman now of the Benghazi Special Committee to investigate Benghazi. Former prosecutor, pretty aggressive guy, seen as a rock star within the Republican Party on the conservative side. Yeah. And he endorses Marco Rubio. That's got to help. Maybe help Rubio on his immigration flop that he did, and so we'll see where all this goes.
Do you think that there's an element of the Republican Party that doesn't like that because it's the establishment portion of the Republican Party through Trey Gowdy? Because I think he's still connected with the establishment portion of the party, and Marco Rubio has been one of those that they talk about as the establishment candidate.
Well, the real establishment candidate was Jeb Bush. And
yeah, well,
Jeb
that
Bush
fizzled.
He's fizzled and he's fallen sadly.
Yeah.
And so the attention and the money and the endorsements seem to be going to Marco Rubio. I don't know, it just needs to be played out.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so, all right, political correctness.
Okay.
One thing that gets Donald Trump high marks is that everything that's been politically correct, he has hit square in the head.
Mm-hmm. I think he's got great mileage out of it, too.
And he continues to talk about it.
Yeah.
Even Ben Carson. I will say this, Ben Carson talked about political correctness long before Donald Trump did.
Yes.
Donald Trump just practiced anti-political correctness. Ben Carson talked about political correctness killing us.
Mm-hmm.
But have we reached a saturation point of political correctness?
Yes, without a doubt.
In your thinking?
Absolutely. I think that the country is getting just absolutely sick of it. I think a portion of the country, and I think it's the left that has instigated this, and it continues strongly. The thing that's really weird about it is, though, that we get political correctness, especially when it comes to tolerance and such issues, but it seems as though the left, even though they keep this agenda going, are becoming the less tolerant group, because if you don't see things their way, now you're a hater or any other number of labels, and you get screamed down.
But all that's been exposed now.
It has.
All of that has been exposed.
But where's it been exposed?
Well, it's been exposed primarily through the conservative talk and Fox News.
Right. Okay.
So not on the left.
But not on the left. Right.
Yeah. So it's been exposed. If it wasn't for conservative talk radio and Fox News, the antithesis of all the other stuff, then you wouldn't see that. But anyway, how do you see political correctness?
Well,
and do you have it in Russia? Or did you?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
To be honest, I haven't really thought of it, but I'm sure it's everywhere. And I read somewhere, political correctness is grace without truth. Political incorrectness is truth without grace. So either one of them are incomplete, because truth without grace, it's kind of like aggression. It's not really what we want. Grace without truth is codependency on something without disguising it as love. So you really want something in between. And I don't know, I don't have the answer. I don't know if you do, but I think we're tired of both, and yet we don't know what the third option is.
Well, that brings up a very interesting point, because I think the church today, universal, let me just narrow it down. The church within the United States is struggling between grace and law.
And how?
It's either totally legalistic or they're overabundance with grace. You can sin on Friday, repent on Saturday, and still be in the pulpit on Sunday.
There you go. Yeah.
All right, so you have these extremes going on out here. And I never saw this, but Polina, you're brilliant, that political correctness is grace without truth. Now this goes to, and then incorrect political or non-political correctness would be truth without grace. Now, I've said this on the air before, and people are beginning to understand it. Okay?
Say it again.
If you take political correctness, grace without truth, what the left has done is they go through the heart to get to the head. Okay? So if they give you a lot of grace, you're emotionally engaged, and you accept that it's truth. Republicans turn around and they say, no, political correctness is truth without grace. So they go to the head with all of the data, thinking that they can emotionally in charge. Now, young people are shutting down with this. Young people are saying no to it. And I say young people, those 35 and below are saying no to, they want the good feeling.
Okay.
They don't want the data, they don't want the truth in a linear sense. They don't want the data, the points, the percentages. They could care less about it. They see that as harsh, and they see that as legalism.
Question. I just read an article that said Donald Trump is about to make a major media purchase. He's going to start buying time on TV.
$2 million a week.
And they're going to say, and they said that he's not going to go after profile or image, because people know who he is. He said he got that for free already on all the coverage. So now, because he's been, accused of being very light on the details as far as policy is concerned. So now they're saying that these ads are going to be geared more towards policy detail. Is he making a mistake going to our head?
I haven't seen the spot yet.
I haven't either.
He's done one thing brilliantly. He said, let's make America great again. That's an emotional, that has everything everybody wants to hear. Because it is saying we were great, we lost it, we want to be great again, and that's on the minds of everybody. Now how we go about that is the problem. But I have to see one of his spots to determine whether or not he's going for the head of the heart. I don't know. But anyway, you were going to say something.
Oh, no, well, going back to what you were talking about, the church and grace and legalistic, I wonder, do you guys think that we have, trying to be relevant to the culture as a church, have we become kind of a product and disciples of the culture?
Some could accuse the church of that, yeah, some elements.
Well, we've allowed the culture to define us. And so we're still scrambling to find acceptance because we've lost our influence. And so we're scrambling. Now, that's showing up in how the message is being presented, We have turned, and rightfully so, we have turned very much to grace. Because the world's in chaos and people are looking for hope. And so we're preaching grace thinking that gets them in. Well, guess what? It does bring them in. This is where we drop the ball. We don't then take them and make them disciples. Whatever motivation, emotion they had to come into the church, we keep them there at that point. We don't move them on into maturity and discipleship. Scripture says make disciples out of them. So we've done very well on the grace thing, to the point where some pastors are angry at those who want to bring the law in to be part of it. So in some ways, we want the Bible without the 10 Commandments, so to speak. We want the gospel without responsibility. We want the gospel without change. And so looking at young people who look at this race and say it's nothing but hatred and frustration and anger and all this stuff. So what do? We will leave the core of the message and figure out a way to cater the message to meet what they want. And we brought it down to their level, so to speak. Not that that's a bad level, it's just that we brought it down to them, thinking that if we don't say anything that's discriminatory, or we don't say anything that's not politically correct, that somehow we've presented the true gospel to them and we can win them into the church. So the church is struggling. I had the story on the air this morning about the priest running up and down the aisles on one of these hoverboards, and they suspended him. So I asked the question, I've been asking it for quite a while, and I've asked a lot of pastors that have come on the air, have we lost holiness? Have we lost the sense of holiness? Would you go to the White House in a pair of flip-flops and cutoffs?
No, but you'll go to church, won't you? In that, people will, yeah.
That sounds very legalistic. I know that, don't write me off. I'm just asking myself, if we turn Jesus from the almighty, sovereign God who shed his own blood to redeem us into a dude, he's one of the buds.
I have a question about this too, because I grew up liturgical. When we went to church, we put on jackets and ties, even as little kids.
Okay, stop.
Okay.
I gotta take a break. He's on a roll.
Okay.
This will get him a chance to cool off. I'll be right back. Well, welcome back. Boy, we're having a little discussion. We probably ought to leave the camera on between the breaks here.
I know.
Anyway, we're just jawing about some things. All right, we were talking about
losing holiness in the church. About flip-flops and shorts.
And jackets when you were a boy.
Yeah, that's where I was going. It's like, as I mentioned, I grew up liturgical. And so when we went to church, even as little kids, we had jacket and tie on, nice shoes and slacks. We looked pretty good. Now, we know that, Jesus was a practicing Jew. Did he get dressed up for synagogue? Did he wear his conservative sandals or his cool sandals?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. You know, that's a good question. Is a dress code something
No.
that we have brought into this, or is it something that is more than a tradition in some churches?
But it changes you, whatever you wear. You know, you're not dressing into a T-shirt right now. Why?
Because it's
Is
not
that Perry?
appropriate. It's not
Okay.
appropriate. Yeah.
So maybe we created those standards, but those are standards that we created. So.
And it could also be that, you know, the people of Jesus' day had a certain
Clothes,
wardrobe
yeah.
that they had to wear for their existence, and they perhaps didn't have the extras like we do in our culture, where we can and perhaps they couldn't. I don't know.
Well, I think it goes to what you said, respect.
Yeah.
We're not doing the morning news in T-shirts and
Right.
flip-flops. You know, we're not doing that. Look, I'm not. This is the danger. This is political correctness danger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to be legalistic here. What I'm saying is that we've lost something in the holiness line of things. Something has fallen through the cracks here that we don't walk into church. It's a broad statement, not everybody. We don't have this sense that we're walking into the presence of God, that we're humbled by it, and that, if anything, we should be broken before Him because of what He's done for us, and we deserve nothing, and He's given us everything. We seem to have lost that.
Is it,
You know?
in our culture, we have a bad case in the human race of me-itis. Have we brought me-itis into the church?
Oh, definitely. I would say a lot of the messages you get today are to make you feel good or promise you something or God's got something good. I get all that, and you know what? There's portions of it that's absolutely true. But does that humble you? You know?
And again, I think we've allowed political correctness to enter the church. Because if you think of political correctness, what is it? You know, it's when we modify our behavior to kind of minimize the offense that we're going to bring to people, right? And Christianity is offensive to a lot of people. It was offensive during Christ's times for Jews. The cross was offensive. It's scriptural. And it's offensive now when you tell people that you have to pretty much give up yourself in order to inherit the kingdom. It's
Right.
offensive.
Yeah.
So I think we just need to, I think, my opinion, that we've become too fearful of what people are going to think. We haven't accepted the fact that what we believe is offensive. And I think that's maybe that should be one of the steps, is we need to stand up for what we believe. Because I wonder, if all the skeptics out there, and if the left took us seriously, and we knew that they respect us for what we believe, would we be more prone to say the truth? Because we assume that they're angry. We assume that people are going to get offended. We assume that people are going to disrespect us. But what if we knew that they actually will respect us if we stood up for what we believe? What would be me?
Yeah, I think you make total sense. Look, I don't have an instant answer to all of this. I go back to one thing. We can talk about Trump and Rubio and Cruz and skip over and talk about Clinton all day long. That's not what I read in the emails and the texts that come to the Dove as a result of the programming that's going on here.
Right, right.
We're talking to people who are hurting, whose families are broken up. They can't make a house payment. They've lost their house. They're sick. They got terminal cancer. The relationships are breaking up. And the list goes on and on. Some of the combinations of the pain that you read of what comes in as a result of the programming that you see and hear on the Dove brings back into perspective. I find it interesting that God doesn't need any of us to get His work done, but He uses all of us to accomplish it. And so what's happening is that people tune in at the right time, and whatever the content of that program is, the way that's being presented will connect with their need, and God uses it.
Yeah.
And it's helping people. But you know what? It all comes down to relationships, not things. It comes down to relationship. Number one relationship, the relationship you have with Christ, and then the relationship you have with each other.
Right.
That's the most important thing. So Politics, I think we need to be careful that Christians have a tendency to be Messiah thinking, that we're going to elect a Messiah, they're going to correct everything.
Yeah.
We don't have to pay attention to all that because that's politics, and we can go over here and live our little selfish lives. No, we're to be salt and light across the board. You were going to say something.
Well, you mentioned relationship, and I think the truth is, and we see from all the emails we get here, is that most people have in their families people who are not Christian, maybe gay, maybe have done abortion. So all the things that we consider to be sin. And what I think is happening or has happened is that instead of being kind of counter to the culture that we live in, we've become anti that. And so we're viewed as being angry and aggressive because instead of being, it's easy to love someone that you agree with. It's harder to love your enemy. And I think as Christians, we need to be loving friends, but also loving enemies. Not be afraid to be with people in the same room that are against you. Forgive them, pray for them. And so it's a big job. I don't know, it's a personal job, first of all, because you have to deal with the people around you, first of all.
Well, this is why I'm so excited about parachurch ministries. Because a lot of people don't go to church because they see the church is hypocritical, or they don't do it this way or they do it that way, and the criticisms go forever. Okay, I get that, but go find a place to serve. Go help Treva with the girls. Go help Salvation Army. Go help Hearts with the Mission. Go help the Youth for Christ. Go help the pregnancy centers. There's plenty of places out there, wherever your passion is, that you can go and serve, and through that ministry, be the Christ into somebody's life through that issue. And I see the parachurch ministries as such a vital part of the work of God today in our culture. And we're part of that. Our job is to support those things and make sure they happen. So, but, you know, don't send me a bad email because I'm not for your candidate. You know, and I'm not saying
again,
who I am for. I don't know who I'm for.
But Perry, again, why? See, you already expect. And I know why, because you get emails all the time. You say right, people complain that you didn't say left. You say black, people complain you didn't say white. And it's all the time. And who gave us the right to judge you? Who gave you the right to judge us? At the same time, we're people, so we do make our opinions. And I think it's perfectly fine for you. I give you permission to express your opinion.
Arrived.
And if someone doesn't like it, fine, express your opinion. But let's not be trying to change each other. You know, give each other freedom that God gave us to be. Freedom of choice, to believe what we believe and to think the right candidate is the right candidate.
I just think there's some things that are obvious, and you know, we got to be careful about. I don't want the gospel to be watered down. At the same time, there's some great teachers out there. We have some great churches in Southern Oregon and around. Some good things are happening, and they are growing. But what an opportunity in the craziness of this world to reach people. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. When I got into Christian broadcasting years ago, you know, I did it because I thought it was a cool thing, and that primarily our listeners and viewers would be Christian. Not today. It's just the opposite. And so people are hungry for truth. And I've always said, don't let your evangelism, don't let your activism eclipse your evangelism. Your activism should be a source of evangelism. But if you're just going to become an activist, well, God bless you. Have fun.
Well, some people confuse the two. Some people confuse the two.
Yeah, they think, you know. But the only person that was perfect was Jesus, and I haven't seen another one since. You know.
No, but some people came close. No, but I love, like, Jerry. The way he reacts to people, you know how Jerry's crazy sometimes? And he's so excited about everybody and loves everybody and is happy for everybody. And I'm not saying he's perfect. There are a lot of things going on.
Pam thinks he is.
Wait a minute, the phone's ringing. Don't answer it.
No, I just wanted to bring in the discussion that I like. That's the
we're
great
just
quality.
jawing all of this. There's no real answers. But I do think that we have a time in our history of humanity for the church to be salt and light. You do it with grace, but you have to back it up with the law. That doesn't mean legalism.
No.
So there's a balance there. And I'm just concerned that we would be more careful in presenting Christ who he really is. You know, keep the holiness in it, keep the respect in it, keep the righteousness in it.
Yeah.
You know, don't minimize the sacrifice that was made on Calvary as just an event. I mean, it was God interfacing with man to save man, and so that's my only concern, for whatever that's worth. Hey, we're going to continue on in a whole nother way of doing this. And reaching young girls who otherwise would never have a chance to hear what Jesus is all about, with Treva Kuiper coming up in just a few moments. We'll be right back.